Every Tuesday morning, a woman walks into the same office building carrying a canvas tote bag with a fraying handle. No designer logo, no status item of any kind. Her shoes are clean, but unremarkable. She drives a 2013 Ford Escape with 140,000 miles on it. The kind of car you park and immediately forget. Her colleagues have noticed. Of course they have. The junior associate assumed she was underpaid and quietly bitter about it. The office manager figured she was going through something difficult at home. One person, and this part matters, once offered to organize a collection for her after she mentioned her car needed a new battery. She thanked them graciously and paid for the battery herself, with cash. What none of them know is that she has $3.8 million in index funds, zero mortgage, paid off 4 years ago. Her 2 children have fully funded college accounts. She has not had consumer debt of any kind in over a decade. She could walk out of that building today and her financial life would not change in any meaningful way. She stays because she wants to. The canvas tote stays because she has understood something that almost nobody in that building has figured out. Her situation is not an anomaly. It is, according to the most comprehensive study ever conducted on American millionaires, completely typical. Thomas Stanley and Danko spent decades, not months, decades, tracking the actual financial behavior of wealthy Americans. Not what wealthy people posted, not what they drove to galas, what they actually did with their money, year after year behind closed doors. What they found destroyed the entire cultural narrative about what wealth looks like. The median price a millionaire pays for their car is $31,367, not leased, purchased, and not a luxury vehicle. An Experian automotive study confirmed the pattern. 61% of Americans earning over $250,000 a year drive Hondas, Toyotas, or Fords. Not BMWs, not Mercedes, brands that blend into any street in any American city without a second glance. Now here is the other side of that equation. 8% of Americans earning under $100,000 a year own luxury vehicles. They are financing $60,000 cars on $50,000 salaries. One group looks like money, the other group has money. Rarely the same people. And somewhere in a parking lot right now, the person in the BMW is looking at the person in the Honda and feeling sorry for them. This is not a video about being cheap. It is not an argument for deprivation, for refusing to enjoy life, or for pretending money doesn't exist. This is about something the financial industry will never tell you because there is no product to sell you at the end of it. Looking poor might be the most strategically important financial decision you ever make. Not occasionally, not in certain contexts, across every dimension of your financial life, simultaneously, for decades. The research on this is not a theory. It is not one study. It is a consistent, replicated, overwhelming body of evidence pointing in a single direction. The people who build lasting wealth do not behave like the people who appear wealthy. In fact, the more closely you study the data, the more you realize they behave like near opposites. When Stanley and Danko published The Millionaire Next Door, they expected their findings to confirm what everyone assumed, that wealthy people live in wealthy neighborhoods, drive expensive cars, and spend accordingly. Every single one of those assumptions was wrong. 80% of the millionaires they studied were first-generation affluent. No inheritance, no family money, no head start of any kind. They built it from nothing, over time, through behavior. Half of them had lived in the same house for more than 20 years. They were more likely to drive a Ford than a Bentley. They were disproportionately clustered in middle-class and blue-collar neighborhoods, not the affluent zip codes everyone assumes wealth gravitates toward. This surprised the researchers. They went in expecting one thing and found the systematic, documented opposite. The reason is straightforward. High-income professionals in white-collar careers tend to redirect their income into maintaining a visible lifestyle. The raise becomes the better apartment. The promotion becomes the newer car. The bonus becomes the trip that gets posted. Wealth builders operate on a different logic entirely. Every dollar spent on appearance is a dollar that cannot compound over 30 years. They have internalized this so completely, it no longer requires discipline. It has simply become how they think about money. Dave Ramsey's research on millionaire behavior confirmed the same pattern. The top car brands driven by millionaires? Toyota first, Honda second, Ford third, BMW doesn't appear until sixth, Mercedes does not appear at all. Apparently nobody told the millionaires what millionaires are supposed to drive. Jeff Bezos drove a Honda Accord for years. During the period he was already worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and Amazon was reshaping global commerce, he drove a Honda Accord. Mark Zuckerberg was photographed in an Acura TSX base model. Larry Page, co-founder of Google, drove a Toyota Prius. Warren Buffett still lives in the same house he purchased in Omaha in 1958 for $31,500. He has not moved. He has not renovated it into a compound. He bought a house. He lives in the house. The house is still the house. These are not people making do with what they have. These are people who have made a deliberate, calculated, repeated decision that the cost of looking wealthy is higher than the benefit. They ran the numbers. The numbers were not close. The rest of us are still working on it. In 1899, sociologist Thorstein Veblen introduced a concept that explained consumer behavior more accurately than anything that came after it. He called it conspicuous consumption. The central observation was this: people do not buy things primarily for their utility. They buy signals. They buy messages. They buy what those objects communicate to the people around them. A $50,000 watch keeps time. So does a $50 watch. Both will tell you it is 2:30 in the afternoon with identical accuracy. The $49,950 difference does not purchase better timekeeping. It purchases the ability to communicate something about yourself every time someone glances at your wrist. Luxury brands have understood this for over a century. They are not selling materials, they are selling narrative. Research confirms what Veblen observed. People who view money as a symbol of power and status report lower levels of financial satisfaction over time. They spend to signal value to others, often without any systematic monitoring of their actual financial position. The pursuit of appearing wealthy creates, with remarkable consistency, the conditions that make actual wealth impossible. Every leased BMW is a monthly payment that index funds never received. Every designer bag is shares that were never purchased. Every status symbol has an opportunity cost, not in dollars, but in decades of compound growth that simply did not happen. A 2025 Empower study found that 62% of everyday millionaires still budget, still shop for deals, and actively avoid extravagant spending even after crossing the $1 million mark. The habits that build wealth are identical to the habits that preserve it, which means the people who abandon those habits the moment they reach a milestone are making a very specific and very expensive choice. There is a dimension to displaying wealth publicly that most people do not consider until something goes wrong. According to Javelin Research, cybercriminals stole the identities of 6.4% of the general public in a recent measurement period. For high net worth individuals, those holding assets of $1 million or more, that number rises to 8.1%. A joint study by Experian and the Department of Justice found that affluent Americans are 43% more likely to experience identity theft than the average person. The attacks targeting wealthy individuals are architecturally different from mass phishing campaigns. Security professionals call them whaling attacks. They are not sent to millions of people hoping someone clicks. They are individually constructed operations, built from social media profiles, data breaches, and open-source intelligence, designed to target a single person. Attackers impersonate trusted financial advisors, private bankers, even family members. The goal is to extract sensitive information or authorize fraudulent transfers that look entirely legitimate until they don't. Synthetic identity fraud, where criminals combine real personal data with fabricated information to create a credible false identity, is now the fastest-growing category of financial crime in the United States. The Federal Trade Commission reported that Americans lost $10.3 billion to fraud in 2023. Investment fraud alone accounted for $4.6 billion of those losses. The schemes behind those numbers were not random. They specifically targeted people whose visible wealth made them identifiable. Displaying your assets publicly is a detailed, searchable, permanently accessible advertisement for what you own. Looking wealthy is an invitation. Looking ordinary is just Tuesday. The social consequences of visible wealth are rarely discussed because they accumulate slowly. By the time most people notice them, they are already structural, built into every relationship, every professional interaction, every family dynamic. Drive a luxury car and people assume you can cover expensive dinners. Wear the right labels and colleagues expect you to absorb the bill. Move into a high-income neighborhood and the baseline spending of the people around you becomes your new psychological floor. Research on social comparison shows that status is inherently relational. It only has meaning in reference to other people. In environments with high visible inequality, the pressure to signal status intensifies. The gap between tiers widens and the cost of maintaining your position grows with it. The person driving the unremarkable car carries carries none of this. Nobody assumes they can afford the expensive dinner. Nobody expects extra. Nobody resents them for having more because nobody has calculated how much more they have. This invisible position provides something that money, in a direct and almost painful irony, cannot purchase. Relationships that formed without a financial filter. Research consistently shows that high net worth individuals report a paradox: greater power paired with reduced trust. They can never fully evaluate whether someone values them as a person or as access to their resources. The person who looks middle class while being quietly wealthy never faces this question. Every friendship they have formed did so before anyone ran the numbers. That is worth more than it sounds. Stanley and Danko built a framework out of their research that cuts through every assumption about income and wealth. PAWs, prodigious accumulators of wealth. UAWs, underaccumulators of wealth. The categories have nothing to do with how much money you make, everything to do with what you do with it. A janitor earning $50,000 a year can be a stronger paw than a physician earning $700,000. The physician naturally has a professional image to maintain. The parking lot alone requires a certain standard. The formula is direct. Multiply your age by your pre-tax annual household income, then divide by 10. A 40-year-old earning $150,000 should have approximately $600,000 in net worth to be on pace. Those below that line are UAWs, spending their income rather than building on it. UAWs are not unintelligent. This is the part that matters. They are frequently highly educated, in demanding careers, fluent in financial concepts. They can explain compound interest to you clearly and accurately. They simply do not apply it. What drives their spending is what researchers call the better-than framework. A better car than the neighbors, a better watch than the colleagues, a better vacation than the siblings. Each purchase is not really about the object, it is about the message, and those messages are extraordinarily expensive over time. Stanley and Danko called these million-dollar choices, decisions that, redirected toward investment instead, would have produced over $1 million in accumulated wealth. Every one of them felt completely reasonable at the time. Stanley and Danko included a specific example in their research that makes the opportunity cost of status spending visceral rather than theoretical. One couple smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day for 46 years. The cumulative cost of those cigarettes exceeded the total market value of their home by $33,000. Had that same money been invested instead, the resulting portfolio would have exceeded $2 million. $2 million in cigarettes. Status purchases operate on identical logic. The gap between a $30,000 car and an $80,000 car is $50,000. That $50,000, invested at a conservative 7% annual return over 25 years, becomes approximately $270,000. That is the actual price of the upgrade, not $50,000, $270,000, paid in the future, in options that will not exist. Now run the full scenario. 2 people, same income, $200,000 a year. Person A saves 25% annually, $50,000, and invests it. Over 25 years at 7%, that portfolio reaches approximately $3.4 million. Person B saves 5%, $10,000, and allocates the rest to maintaining a lifestyle that looks like success. Over the same 25 years at the same rate, approximately $680,000. Person A looks middle class. Person B looks wealthy. Person A has $3.4 million. Person B has $680,000 and a wardrobe. After 25 years, Person A has 5 times the net worth, 5 times the options, 5 times the security. Person B has better photos from their 30s. Both made choices every single year. Only one set of choices compounds. The behavior that leads to Person B's outcome does not arrive randomly. It is installed, deliberately, systematically, beginning in childhood and reinforced without pause through every medium available. Stanley and Danko documented it directly. Young people are conditioned to believe that those who have money spend lavishly, and that failing to display success means not having it. This message does not come from one place. It comes from everywhere at once. Television has spent decades presenting luxury as the default condition of a successful life. Social media has transformed consumption into performance. Every purchase a piece of evidence in an ongoing public case for your own status. Advertising has made a single promise, repeated in 10,000 variations. The right thing, bought at the right moment, will make you into the right person. The consolidated message is simple and consistent. Successful people look successful. If you want to be taken seriously, your spending must demonstrate that you have arrived. This is demonstrably, measurably, documentably false. Its effects are entirely real anyway. Someone who absorbs this narrative completely will spend their entire career performing financial success while quietly depleting the actual thing. They will arrive at 55 with a curated collection of objects that peaked in value the moment the purchase was made, and a retirement account that cannot sustain the life they have been performing for 3 decades. The person who rejects the narrative operates in a different reality. They invest while others perform. They compound while others display. At 55, they have something the performer will never possess: genuine choice about how to spend the rest of their life. Something is shifting, slowly, measurably, in the data. Bain & Company's 2024 luxury market report documented a significant change in how affluent consumers are approaching spending. The trend is away from visible branding and conspicuous logos toward longevity, craftsmanship, and understatement. Stealth wealth, quality that communicates nothing to people who don't already understand it, has become its own distinct form of social currency among those with genuine financial literacy. A 2024 Accenture survey found that 52% of global shoppers now actively prefer content from influencers who showcase practical, understated consumption over aspirational excess. When the television series Succession ended its run, global searches for Loro Piana, a brand distinguished almost entirely by the absence of visible branding, spiked dramatically. The appeal was not a logo, it was the deliberate removal of one. Wealth legible only to people who have already figured out what wealth actually looks like. This represents something deeper than a fashion cycle correcting itself. It reflects a growing cultural recognition that visible wealth carries costs, financial, social, psychological, that invisible wealth simply does not. 40 years of conspicuous consumption to arrive at this conclusion. Progress. Back to the woman with the fraying canvas tote bag. The 2013 Ford Escape with 140,000 miles. The unremarkable shoes. The colleague who nearly organized a collection for her battery. That car, that bag, that entire unremarkable exterior represents something the people in that office building will spend the rest of their careers trying to figure out, and most of them, statistically, will not. It represents the understanding that every dollar redirected from appearance to investment is a dollar that compounds silently for decades without requiring maintenance, without requiring an audience, and without requiring a single person's approval. It represents the decision that the goal was never to look like a success story. The goal was to have one. The colleagues who glance at her car and feel the quiet relief of comparison, the ones in the leased vehicles and the financed wardrobes, the ones performing a version of financial arrival they are still paying for, those are the same people who will still be in that parking lot at 70 because leaving is not an option they built for themselves. She could leave tomorrow. The only reason she hasn't is that she doesn't want to yet. That distinction is the entire point. Looking poor is a compounding strategy that works across every dimension of financial life at once. It removes you from the target list of criminals who build operations specifically around visible affluence. It protects your relationships from the financial distortion that money introduces the moment it becomes visible. It preserves your position in every negotiation you will ever enter. It builds self-reliance in your children by removing the safety net from their field of vision. It provides a form of psychological security that does not erode, does not require maintenance, and does not demand an annual upgrade to remain effective. It keeps capital compounding instead of performing. The cost of all of this is minimal and specific. Some people will underestimate you. Some people will assume you have less than you do. Let them. The goal was never to be correctly estimated by strangers in a parking lot. The goal was freedom. The kind you build in private, over decades, without asking for anyone's permission or approval. Every millionaire driving a Toyota made the same quiet decision. Wealth is not what you show, it is what you keep.